Welcome back to Aveste Origins. We have got an amazing episode today. We are joined by the man, the myth, the legend that is Jake Messer. Jake created the t-shirt of the festival season, Disco Only, as well as another brand that we love called Acid Love. Not only has he done that, he's also created a site for amazing independent clothing, which is called Unik, and the collection that almost every footballer and YouTuber that we've seen in the entire world is wearing this summer, which is called Bound. We talked about how to start 2 clothing businesses from scratch, how Jake managed to collab with his dream collaborator, which was from the Arctic Monkeys, and then also how this sort of crazy story that he's got with Scream, which you loved as a Scream fan.
Absolutely.
So we'll get right into that. So without further ado, let's get into the show.
We know who you are. Well, we think we do anyway. But yeah, who are you, Jake? And how did the person, the entrepreneur that sits in front of us right now, how did he come to be? So yeah, just tell us about your repertoire.
You can't always know too much because it has to keep you a little bit interested.
Exactly.
It's a difficult one, really. I think it was always in me to run a business and to do this kind of thing. I think I always said to some pals, I was as soon as I had an idea, I'd go for it 100%. And that was always in my mind. And I was always a kid washing cars down the street for £1. Do you know what I mean? That kind of cliche story that you hear from a lot of business owners, was kind of me too. I was always doing little hustles, buying and selling bits, and always had interests in that, footballer signatures or whatever. Do you know what I mean? There was always something there, at the surface from a younger age. And then when I went to school, I was pretty crap in school, real bad focus, sort of ADHD sort of type thing, and just couldn't sit and concentrate at all. Was pretty gobby to the teachers, but in quite a witty way that actually I kind of see it in business now a little bit, where I could be where I could kind of almost be cleverer than them and win it round to find a little caveat corner where they couldn't actually have a go at me. And then I went to uni and did business management, but that was in leisure. So it was more I was more sporty back then. So I always thought that I was going to do something business wise in sport for some reason, just because that was more how I went. And I was always mad into music as well, but never creative. So didn't have a creative bone in my body. Was pretty good at sports, but couldn't draw, couldn't play an instrument. As soon as I picked up an instrument, I've got a bass guitar when I was 12, 13, and just played it 3 times and was I couldn't do it, because if I wasn't good at something quickly, I was just nah, just kind of sack it off. So went to uni, did business management and leisure, and then got a grad job at Virgin in Peterborough, which was and that was in operations. So that was very behind the scenes. It was operations of a fault center for business customers. So it's Thomas Cook's internet's gone down. How can we what do they? And it was as a company, it was so corporate and great. They had all these values and stuff like that. And they did, as a company like that, they always do look after your staff and stuff like that. But I actually knew when I walked through the door and I went to have a look at the offices, when I was going to look at the flats that I was going to rent there, I was this isn't right. I knew this wasn't for me. And I knew before anyway, but my parents were quite strict on, not strict on it, but were quite reinforcing to being this is a really big company, this is a great opportunity, you've got to do it. Which is, I can understand exactly why they were doing that. My brother's stupidly academic, super, super clever. He was at Deloitte, so one of the big accountancy firms, and was for me, they were a bit I think it was not surprised that I was offered that, but they were this is a great opportunity for probably how lack of academic I actually was. And then I remember doing it for a month and was that was not good. And then my missus of 5 years broke up with me. So then I was super depressed. I was in this flat in Peterborough living with some weirdos, the worst people, mix of people in the world. It was crazy. Super, super depressed. Phoning my mum every other night, crying, I can't do this, I can't do this job. And she was stick it out. So that was about 3 months in. I was literally, and she was we'll stick it out for 6 months so it doesn't look so bad in your CV, which is probably another thing that's I was like, what the hell did I listen to that? Like, what the hell did it matter? I left it 3 months or 6 months. I just put myself through 3 more months of torture. But like, they're trying to just, it's, you know what it was like when you're like trying to get the perfect CVs and you're taught to like, as an older age, like that was important then. And like 10 years ago, CVs were kind of everything, like before social media, and people could be savvy with tech and all that kind of stuff. And people were probably more creative in certain ways. So I was like, after getting dumped, I was like, this is the final straw. And I went to London. I remember going to London and walking around Spitalfields Market and seeing like all the independent, like clothes shops just selling little like t-shirts off the rail. Do you know what I mean? I was like, no one really does this like online. Like no one's sort of bringing this kind of thing together. Like I know a couple of designers, like maybe something there. So like in the last 2 months at Virgin, whilst I was there, because I knew I was like 6 months, I was quitting. I was like, I wrote the business plan for Unik and was like, and then Virgin offered me a move to London in the marketing department in Hammersmith, which I actually probably would have ended up loving, because it was a brand new office. It was in marketing. It's Virgin, like doing all the shit with Usain Bolt. Like Virgin Media was like doing really good things, and in terms of like TV advertising stuff, I was like, it would have been really good. There was like 20k in Hammersmith. I'd have been living in a shoebox, like eating dry noodles, and I was just like, and London's just never. Sorry, like, do you guys live in London?
We do, but slag it off. Slag it off.
London's just, for me, it's just never done it for me. I've just never been engrossed in like, I'm really spontaneous, and I just like being able to walk everywhere and like meet a mate in 2 minutes. Like, I'm very, very spontaneous. In London, you've got to be pretty like organised and planned and like relentless. And it's just never, just one of them things that just places that just never just appealed to me. I love going now and like visiting and seeing all of it. Like I appreciate it loads more now as like restaurants and shopping and just like the place. But yeah, so I was like, screw it, I'm going to do this thing and go back and like give it a crack. So like I've got this idea, so I wrote the business plan, got the two designers on board who have both from Shrewsbury. So Jack, who does Vice 84 now, which is still going, still work with him. He's from Telford, so just outskirts. And Josh was one of the designers who I went to secondary school with, who I was like best mates with at secondary school. So it was like two lads that were already there. So it's like they could design the brands, like I'll basically form Unik, which is the outlet that is now, like the brand collective, if you like. And then just gave it a go. I got like a startup loan, like they were doing them young entrepreneur startup loan things with James Kahn, I think. So I got like a 2.5k startup loan and like a desk in a really weird business centre in Telford. I don't know if you've ever been to Telford, but
no,
there's not much good happening there. So I was in this weird little business hub, and I can't even remember what some of the businesses were there, but yeah, that was an interesting moment, because I was like, I just didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I've got to go in and sit and show my face and pretend I was like finding things to work on. But yeah, that was kind of like the journey from me doing it. So I guess that like the headline with that is guy gets heartbroken and starts a business.
Why is it always the breakups that push people to do these
I had nothing
things?
to lose. Look, like my parents were so supportive and lovely, and like moved back home and for free and didn't pay any rent and food paid for. So without that, like for a year, I would have been screwed. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have been possible. So that was like obviously a really lucky, privileged like thing that I had, to be able to just go and live rent free for a year and just give it a go and sort of see why not. So yeah, that was kind of like the basis backstory.
What did you do with $2,500? Because I think most people, when they're thinking about like starting a business, they would go, $2,500 is not going to get me anywhere. Like how did you like? Because like Unik is like a massive business now. Like, so how did you go from $2,500 into where?
Yeah, well, it's mad really, because now you're right. Like we'll drop $2,500 on one t-shirt, like restock. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's $2,500 now does get you nowhere, but like back then you could be really savvy at like, right, I know a photographer that I can get to shoot stuff and sling them a couple of tees. Like I used Big Cartel, which was free for up to whatever 10 products or whatever. Like no, I paid $9.99 a month to get the domain. The domain on GoDaddy was like, for Unik, was like $3.99 a year.
Wow.
So I locked that in dead early. Like domains are crazy expensive now. So like, actually, the base of like starting it wasn't too expensive. And then so I think I did 9 styles to start of 25 pieces. So that was like, that was like all the some little business cards. Everyone gets little business cards. I probably gave out like 2 in my entire life. Everyone gets some business cards and some little novelty like printed stamps or whatever. So yeah, that was it. And then so there's no like rental costs, storage costs. Like it was literally just the basis of the product. And I'd buy like 20 paper mailing bags from eBay, and then I lived around the corner from the post office. So actually, it was a proper easy to start bedroom business. That like now, don't get me wrong, I'd be like, ask the same question: how could you start with $2.5 grand? But strangely, 10 years ago, it seemed feasible and easy, which is mental.
Wow.
And who were the first like customers? Because again, like what a lot of people would be scared about when they're starting a business is like, how am I actually going to get people through the door? Like, how did you actually like? Who were the first customers to the brand? Were they just all your mates?
I was a major optimist. I remember when you have to send the business plan off to the people who are going to give you that $2.5K loan. They like review it and just make sure that it's not a pile of shite, basically. And I remember sending it off, and they were like, "These sale figures aren't realistic." I think I was like predicting to sell like 200 units a month or something, like 200 orders a month, 300 orders a month. And they were like, "Do you think you'll do that?" I was like, "Yeah, piss easy." Which was, I'm everly optimistic about everything, I think, which is kind of good, but then kind of like, shit, I underestimate every job or like every sort of task, really, when it comes down to it. But nah, it was a lot like, so I threw like a little launch party in my house, and like had a little order sheet on the front, and then I had all the garments like hung up behind me, and we had like little makeshift DJ decks and that where we were DJing. So they like, I think they bought like 500-600 quid's worth on the first night, which was like
Nice.
pretty decent. So I was pretty happy. That was just organic cash. And then after that it was just like mates. And then you start to make those sales of people you don't know. But like for me, it was lovely to make, when you're making sales to mates of mates, because they're not just buying it because they're seeing, it must have been all right for them to see it. It's tough to tell you now, like stuff, oh God, it was so bad. It was so bad. Not quality-wise, but so, a brand can look so good from launch now because they're so, like, I had nothing to go off, really. I had no benchmarks. Like, ASOS Urban Outfitters were like the benchmarks, but like, their content was shit then, so... Yeah, it was pretty surreal. But it's actually a funnier part of like the starting is, so before the online launch in the February 2014 it is, before the online launch, I went and did a pop-up in Camden. So put all the garms in a suitcase, got the train down, was what, 100 quid, put it stuff in a suitcase, dragged a mate with me. The way to drag to all the pop-ups. I was like, did a pop-up in a shop in Camden. It was like fashion meets music. So I was like, this is perfect. Sat in a shop the first day, one person walked in this shop. So I was sold this like thing where I'd sat up and I was like, oh my God. So I was like, the next day I was like, I can't do that again. So then in the afternoon, I remember putting stuff actually on a table on Camden High Street. I think one guy who knew it came and bought 2 t-shirts. And the next day, I was like, I can't do this again. Paid for like 150 quid stall at Camden Market and sold like 3 or 4 pieces and was like, at least I've sold something. And then a coffee blew over in the wind and spilt on like 10 t-shirts. So I was like negative down from that day, and then drove. And I remember getting the train back from London and sitting on the train thinking like, already 2 days in, before the online launch, I was like, fucking hell, this is worth it. Because I went there thinking I was going to sell out everything. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was going to sell out everything in Camden. How cool is that going to be? Yeah, sold like 5 things and ruined 10 t-shirts. So I was like, shit, should I really do this online launch now? I just give up now. And then did the online launch and did like 20, 25 orders or something. And was like, yeah, it's all right. Let's go from there.
Was like fashion always something that you were really passionate about, or was it just like when you say you were just walking through Spitalfields Market and you came across this idea? Was it literally like, was it almost like that sort of like there was a eureka moment where you were like, this is what I want to do? Or was it always something that you were like, you always loved fashion throughout your childhood, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think I always loved it. I was always big into brands. Like I always loved Lacoste and Fred Perry. And like those kind of brands. I'm like really into indie music from 12 onwards. So like dressed in a lot of sort of like indie brands like the Fly 53 and Bench and Geo Joy, like brands like that back in the day that were just like all the indie bands would wear basically. So I was always, Lacoste was always the one. I loved Lacoste, like just always loved Lacoste. So I always like Lacoste has always been pretty cool. So I was like, look back at some photos when I'm in a full Lacoste tracksuit.
Legend.
We've all been there.
Yeah, and then obviously went like heavily into sort of like the top man sort of skinny jeans, but always was very conscious about like kind of like what I was wearing. And then I remember the first like time getting into independent brands. It was like there's a place called Affleck's Palace in Manchester, and they had a little shop in there. I can't remember what it's called, Medic Matty, and they were selling like a few little independent brands. They sold XCVB from Sheffield, and I remember buying one of their tees and was like, yeah, this is cool. Because it was like no one's got this tee, and it was before it was like fully online. So I was like, I quite like the idea subconsciously of the fact that no one else had these t-shirts. It was like quite a different, like oversized sort of fit. So I was like, yes, it's quite cool. So I've always been like into fashion, but I wouldn't ever have predicted it was where I was going to go career-wise. Like 100% no way was like where I saw myself ending up for sure.
Unik is made up of like a number of different brands, isn't it? So like, tell us how they come to be. Like, do they just pop into existence when you have a great idea or a designer comes about? Yeah, talk to us about the collective of.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, really. Like I said, the two designers that I launched it with at the start were sort of, they were already on my plate, they were already on my radar, like they were there in front of me. So it made full sense to do it with them. And then what I loved about those two is that they had completely different styles. So like Josh was very sort of like neat and smooth and sort of had that like, in the time that like Jack Wills and Hollister was really popular, had that kind of like really nice emblem, sort of like smooth graphics. And then Jack is just like unbelievable, best designer I have worked with and best I ever will work with. I think he's just shit hot at everything he does. He's done Vice, which has just been unbelievable from the moment it hit the store. It's been exactly the same. It's not changed in 10 years. And that's like retro 80s, sort of like sport streetwear. And then after that, I started to sort of like have a look on Instagram, or like Behance is a website, Behance, where people upload their profiles and whatever. And then actually went into a couple of like colleges and stuff like that and was like, this is the project, like in like for like the graphic design students, but they weren't quite to that, like ready for that kind of thing yet. So it was really hard at the start to find designers, like really, really hard. It took so much hard work and perseverance. And then it's hard to, because I was like trying really out there things. It wasn't like Unik didn't have its proper identity yet as like a whole brand. So it was hard to try and find the ones below it and give them their identity. So yeah, it was really difficult. And then now it's obviously a lot easier because I kind of like, I have the eye for it. I can spot exactly what I need and what we sort of like want. And then if a designer's got something sort of original, or it's sort of very similar to what a load of other pool designers do, or it's like a copy. So yeah, it becomes quite a bit of a difficult thing now because there's so many really good designers. You've got to like try and find one that's got a niche and is suited to the brand. But yeah, every brand basically has like, for me, every designer that I try to work with has to be sort of like young and freelance. Well, young, not like, you know what I mean? Sort of like not a corporate agency or like a big agency. They've got to be like a freelance, independent creative to then give them the opportunity, because they're like working for so many different other things. Like Jack does all the stuff for a YouTuber called Jay Swingler and TGIF, is it? He does all their childish merch and absolutely smashes it. So he's got like they've all got their own other projects going on, but this is like their little side project. I'm like, well, I've got all these expertise in doing the brand and the marketing and production. You just design. Send me a PDF of the designs and I'll do the rest. So it's almost like a little collaboration. It's like your cordial and your water. Do you know what I mean? You mix them together and you've got your full sort of thing, which is kind of perfect because I can obviously see the trends of like what colorways are doing well and whatever. So they can just send me like a base design. I'm like, right, that's going to work really well on this. So yeah, it's a lovely combination, and it like you can see it from the absolute diverse variety that we've got across the brands. And I've loved working with every single one of them. Like really, really interesting. Like 'cause they're all so different as creatives. Like creatives can be really hard work, but like they require a certain type of like everyone's different. They never hit deadlines is the one consistent thing, basically.
It does.
When you're talking to the designers, are they purely doing graphics, or are they looking at fit? Are they looking at like materials? Like, do you do bits of
Nah. Some of them definitely give a damn about that. Like some of them give a shit about the fits and the graphics and how the fits and like the fabrics, because we worked with one of the girls, Marnie, who did one of the disco only designs in like one of the multi concepts we did, and she was like bang into organic cotton. So like it was important, and like bang into sustainability. So it was important we used an organic tee for her design because she kind of wanted us to. So I'm happy to have that like flexibility to suit the designer. Like at the end of the day, like we've got to make a product that they're proud of, and I will never just be like go away from that and make something that they wouldn't want to kind of do. So it's quite a nice mutual respect there that like I'll always give that kind of option of like what kind of t-shirt we want to use and stuff like that. So yeah.
Would you say that Disco Only was one of the first brands that like went absolutely like insane? Because like for me, right, like whenever I go on my Instagram right now, I'm seeing a Disco Only tee. Whenever I'm going out to a pub, I'm seeing a Disco Only tee. Whenever I go to a gig, I'm seeing a tee. Like it's just everywhere. Like first of all, how the hell have you kept up with the demand? So that's the first question I have.
Yeah, I mean, Disco Only is like a fucking amazing thing of just pure organic. It's a pure organic beast, which is so good because it's not been manufactured to be a fad or to do what it's done. Like it wasn't purposely manufactured to be like. Basically, I was at Warehouse Project, like with my mate, a bit pissed or whatever, and someone played. I can't remember which DJ it was, but it was like I think Scream was Scream Night. Anyway, whoever it was playing, and it was played a disco tune. And I turned around to him and just went, "I only listen to Disco Only." Or I said I listen to Disco Only now, and said that, and I went. It was like a penny drop moment there whilst I was a bit fucked, and then wrote the note in my phone, I think, which is like once again quite a cliche thing to do. But wrote the note in my phone, and then I think literally the Monday after the Saturday went in, spoke to one of the designers, went just drew it on a piece of paper, which is what I sometimes do because like some of the brands that we've got in the store are like my concept, where I'll do the brief and then push it to the designer and go, "Here's the brief. Like, can you make this for me?" Disco Only was one of them where it was my idea, like my birthright, if you like. So yeah, wrote Disco Only. Like initially was just like the outline thingy with a little script from below, and then we released that in one color, just a white tee with like the purple thingy, and I was like, did pretty well. I was like, yeah, nice, not bad that, and then released it in the black colorway because people kept asking it for the black. So I was like, which is what you do then, because you make the money off the one t-shirt and go, oh well, made a little bit of money on this t-shirt, I'll bring in the next one. Like that was how it used to work. You used to go from like product to product, build money on one product, send it to the next. Did the black one, I was like, yeah, she's done pretty well. Annie Mac wore it, which was sick for a photo shoot as well, and I was like, yeah, this is picking up now. And then that was like the first ever version, dead basic, just Disco Only. That was 2019 maybe. Probably 2018 actually. 2018 that first one would have been. And then I was like, right, there's something here with this concept. It's not just because initially it was just going to be that one t-shirt. Like that was all it was going to be, just one t-shirt, disco only. And it was the first like proper concept I'd done where it was just like, because it's a brand, but it's become a brand, but at the point it wasn't. It was just a little concept. It was almost like a slogan tee, if you like. And then I was like, well, I got a designer that I loved, because I was like, right, the designer that I loved for ages called Mr. Foamer, and he was brilliant. Like when I was first starting, I was like, he was like so good. And so I was like, I'd love to work with him. He did me like the little simple vinyl, the first little vinyl. Straight after that, released some of them. That went down really well, and then it just sort of like kept going. And I was like, then every different design has been done by like different designers, and then like the guy who's done the Play It Twice one, like he's based over in America. Can't remember where. I always want to say Oklahoma, but I don't think it is. But like he's based in America, so like I think so far now on the disco only concept, I think like 10 different designers have worked on it, which is so cool, because I'll send them a brief and be like, this is how I want this one to look. So like the Everybody Dance one, I was like, I want to do one around Everybody Dance, like one of my favourite disco tunes or whatever. Like it's got a bit of like heritage for me. So I was like, let's do something around that. And then if it's nice, Play It Twice was like a common phrase like that you used to hear at raves all the time. Like back early days, a lot like from dubstep and sort of stuff like that, when people used to like wheel up. So like that was always kind of there, and then I was like playing a little bit more with like not just having disco only, but like having another slogan to it that makes sense to it. And now it's just gone fucking crazy. Like there's not a single time I can go. And literally this morning on my drive to work, I stopped at the traffic lights and a girl walked across the road in a disco only t-shirt going to work. And I got to work and I was like, fucking hell. And I was at the Arctic Monkeys on Saturday, and it literally stood on like, we had a little podium stand bit, stood in the crowd, looked in front of me straight away, disco only t-shirt in front of me, an Arctic Monkeys gig. 5 minutes later, he was in the black one. 5 minutes later, someone walked in front of him wearing the white one. And then I go to the bar, come back, and there's someone on the viewing podium in the one in front of me. And I had a funny Instagram series that was like, I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, looking at the first one, and I was like, oh, you can't write this for the second guy. And then I was like, when the third guy came in, I videoed that. I was like, right, I'm going home. It looks staged. It was ridiculous, but like, yeah, that t-shirt is just like, it's crazy what it's done. But like opening up my Facebook Messenger in the morning, I've been sent a message at 4 a.m, like 3 lads who've never met on a dance floor, arms around each other, was like, we all fucking love the t-shirt. Like we just spent the whole night together, like talking about it and like having a mint time. And I was like, how good of a feeling is that? There's no like monetary value that you can put on that. Like people have just bonded over a t-shirt, like, and had a mint night. Like it's fucking wicked. It's so good.
Never gets old, I bet, seeing that. And it'll probably never get old till you die, just seeing it out in the wild.
Yeah,
I mean, I am sick of seeing that t-shirt.
No, it must be the same. Do you get that like giddy feeling every time you see your own design like out in the world, or is it like as you get older and you've done it a million times, you're just like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, like it's what I was just kind of saying about like the 3 guys that like that's happened so many times where people have spent. But I remember going to Hideout Festival maybe a year after I started it, and bumped into 2 lads in the crowd wearing t-shirts, and then I spent all night with them, like in a night in Hideout, just chatting to them, like buying beers and whatever, and boogieing and that. And that was mint, because I was like so appreciative and so just like blown away that like that was it. And I did like for ages, I would always used to go up to people and be like, and still now, like it was like a natural conversation. I'd be like, that's my brand, like a nice one for supporting it. Like, and like a lot of people, if I'm meeting it, I'll be like, here's my personal discount code, like here's my friends and family discount code, like use that whenever you want, because it's like it's nice to have a little bit of engagement. But yeah, sometimes it's like if it's like festival, I guess a bit silly. It still feels not in a bad way, like it feels mint, and like my mates always like to me, they're like, oh, that must feel crazy, like it is, but the initial seeing them for the first few times is like the best feeling in the world. But still now it's like I still love seeing it, and I still point at it and be like, there you go. And now we've basically just started. So we just the staff went to Parklife this weekend and just went and filmed. Basically, just went to Parklife just to film everyone in it. We put together reels for that, like a video of like Spotted. We started doing a Spotted thing. It's like if anyone sees someone in that t-shirt, it's like put Spotted and tell us where it is. And it's like, it's just all for the community. Do you know what I mean? Like people seeing other people about in it. It's like brings a nice little touch to it. But I'm doing Glastonbury next week. I'm just going to like go around with a little video and just like did it last year. Just going around at Glastonbury, like videoing everyone in it. Look like a weirdo, like, because I've just got my, no one knows what I'm doing because they don't know that it's my brand. I'm just there with a camera, like filming random. Probably get punched at one point or accused of being like.
Oh dear, I think I saw a few at Glastonbury last year, to be fair to you. I imagine the week after Glastonbury, your like sales or trading guys are like, we did well on the old discount codes over the weekend, and he's given out about 500.
Yeah, your friends and family discount got rinsed. What's happening?
Got too drunk and just had it written on his forehead.
Me on the mic behind the deck somewhere, like.
Oh, incredible, man.
We haven't talked about Bound yet, right? And I would say, like, I initially heard about you through Bound, and the reason why I heard about you through Bound was because you're going to laugh about this, but I was seeing Kevin De Bruyne in the stuff. I was seeing every other footballer in the entire world wearing it. I was seeing YouTubers wearing it. Cal Freezy is a guy that I've watched for years. He was wearing it. And like, I was like, what is this brand? I looked it up, found you from there. So like, explain to us, we haven't even talked about Bound yet.
Where did it come from?
Bound yet. Yeah. Where did it come from? Because you were doing this thing, like you already had a business. So like Bound came after, right?
It's a bit on the side.
Yeah, but so Bound came after. So basically Unik's just come up to 10 years old. Then Bound's just hit 5 years old. So where I kind of mentioned my missus before and like her design thing and her brand, like I was always looking to do. So like where I've worked with different designers and help them build brands, but like not like obviously graphics and illustrations and printed t-shirts. It's like I kind of reached that age of giving away my age now, but I can't even remember 5 years ago, 27 when I started Bound. I reached the mature age of where I was like, I will always wear graphic t-shirts and love graphic t-shirts. Like, don't get me wrong, wear them forever. But like my style started to develop in a more higher end where I started to be way more conscious of like the fabrics and the fits, and basically wanted to have like, when I wanted to do a brand, I wanted to have control over that fully. So I was starting to look at not just wholesaling like blanks and printing t-shirts and like doing more decorational purpose stuff and design purpose stuff. I was like, right, I want to actually start creating like garments myself, and that would be my design process. Because like I said, I can't draw for shit, so I was never going to do it that way, and I was never going to learn Photoshop. So yeah, I was like starting to look into manufacturers, and obviously my missus had worked with a few for so long. She knew, she was sort of like my route in and a bit of a hack, like a quick way to learn it fast. So she really helped me with like the first collection for Bound and stuff. Like I picked all the fabrics and like got a load of t-shirts and stuff and like measured the fits and found which ones I liked the most, and like, oh, I like this t-shirt, like the sleeves should be longer, it should be a bit wider on the body, and like I really like this fabric weight. And then she got me a load of fabrics from her supplier and stuff like that, and introduced me to them. And then did the first collection. So I sort of like designed the first collection. And then I remember the first samples coming, and bear in mind I'd done clothes for 5 years already and seen 100 different designs come to fruition. I basically got those samples of them first 9 products for Bound through the door and was just like, I've never been so excited by anything. Feeding the striped tees, I was like, oh my God, I was just like blown away that's kind of what I'd done, and that was where it was. It was just so perfect. So yeah, Bound sort of like came about just purely from me going, right, I'm ready to do my thing now that I'm ready to be in full control of. Still knowing that like I was going to run Unik, but it was also cool because like Unik needed a brand like Bound on the store too. So I kind of knew that it already had like a little bit of like a support blanket there to invest the cash and like to give it a bit of a trial. But yeah, then I was kind of like loving like All Saints pattern shirts at the time. So like they were a big inspiration to the first long sleeve shirts I did. And then the striped tees, like I think I loved like sort of like Uniqlo sort of like striped tees or like Stussy heavy overshirt tees. So there was like a bit of streetwear in it, but then a bit of contemporary, which is why it's like now stated to bridge contemporary and streetwear, which is like a bit of a tagline for it. So yeah, that's how it came about. Once again, just sort of like a bit of a mad thing. I was like, yeah, I've got this idea. I'm sort of like ready now. Let's give it a shot. So that's sort of like how Bound was. And I was lucky because like obviously I'd worked hard on Unik for 5 years, and that was like a sustainable business now. So I'd learned a lot of mistakes already to go into that. Going right, I've already built a store on Shopify, made it look good, and I've got all these like I already had like the good routes in with couriers, and like I already had like a blueprint, if you like, that I could kind of make Bound good earlier on, and like had a good few channels, and obviously Unik had a good following that could plug Bound straight away on there. So yeah, I had like a nice little easy, but like a nice sort of like head start, if you like, to go into Bound. And we did so many. I think I did like sold like 200 of striped t-shirts in the first. Like sold out the striped t-shirts on like the first night, which was like mega, because I've never done that kind of like those numbers before. The striped t-shirts just went down unbelievable, and they like people still message now. I was like, still got those striped t-shirts, and they're still the exact same fit, haven't faded, like as good quality as when I first got them, which is, I was like, that's perfect, because that's exactly what I wanted to do.
I love those striped tees. Those
they are good.
They are classic. And I have to say, like, was it a conscious decision? Because for me, I didn't know a lot of brands that were like whacking the logo, like almost like center body, you know, on the striped tees. Like that, for me, that's something that's relatively unique to Bound, right? Was that like a conscious decision to like go, we're gonna get the brand name like front and center in that way?
Do you know what? It's a weird thing, because it was like pocket print and branding was like traditionally the way and only place it could ever be, right? And I started doing a few central prints on Unik, and it went down so well. So maybe that was like the conscious decision to do the central logo for Bound. It just kind of made sense that like a lot of people, like I loved it in that position. And that's kind of like my thought process with a lot of things. It's like, I kind of designed the clothes for me, and then if other people like them, then that's the bonus, you know? So I was like, that's where I like the logo position. That's where I'm going to stick it. And then, yeah, so it was just kind of like, I wasn't like, oh, maybe more people will like it on the pockets, so I'm going to stick it there. I was like, nah, that's where I think it worked best. And yeah, I never really thought about it like that. And then until actually loads of people do it now. So yeah, I think at the time it was a bit more niche, but.
In terms of the businesses, like, would you say like, for me, it's always hard because like we've got a couple of businesses and we're like, I feel they're very compartmentalized. But with you've got 2 clothing businesses. So like, how do you look at it? Like, do you think like, you know, Bound is part of Unik, or do you see them as 2 completely separate entities? Like, how does it work?
They're so different, man. It's actually, sometimes I think about this, and it's more when I'm talking about it. Do you realize how mentally different they are? And I do as well. Like Unik is a store ultimately, and Bound is a brand.
Yeah.
Like they're different things. Like Unik is like a collective. It's like an umbrella of a real variety of different brands, whereas Bound is like its own individual sort of like piece. And they are very different. They might appeal and have a bit of an audience crossover in some ways. Like for me, I would wear both brands, and they've both got their own occasion. And then some people that shop with Bound would probably never shop with Unik, and vice versa. So it's so weird because they are so different, and there's a lot of things that can cross over with them operationally and logistically. But then creatively, sometimes, like, in fact, I said it to Alex today, who works with me, I was like, it's been really hard of recent switching from one to the other in the same day, because they're just going on different trajectories at the moment in a great way, but they're like, their growth patterns are quite sort of like different, and they require like a different, and like different sort of engineering process, and like they require. So it's weird. They require different. It's like having two different kids, like a girl and a boy, maybe, or like two boys who are completely different. They require such different attention. Like Bound, I can leave for 2-3 days. Sound, it'll just run its like thing. Unik, if I left it for a day, I'd come back and there'd be fucking shit on the walls. Like they're just such different, such different beasts. But that's so enjoyable. It keeps me on my toes. You know?
How many staff do you have, and do they work like cross brand then, like most of them?
Yeah, yes. So that's one brilliant thing that like I've been able to do, because like we were both managing both brands in house at the time. So like first guy that was packing orders, Pat Bound and Unik orders, like Bound, like the guy does customer service now, does Bound and customer service with both brands. That's going to change from tomorrow, but we've actually got a new starter tomorrow, which is why I was setting up the desk. But and then like we're slowly now as both grow in their own direction, like both probably Bound and Unik slightly. I've probably have slightly different languages. They're both very personal, so you call people mate on emails and all that kind of like stuff. But Bound is sort of like going that not more professional, but like Unik's very, very laid back, and like we don't mind people telling people to bugger off if they want a free t-shirt. So do you know what I mean? It's like we're quite like on that cusp of a nice normal business, which I quite like. But Bound, obviously, like when you're selling at a higher price point, you have that sort of like a slightly different language, and we're targeting more guys with Bound as well. So like with Unik, it's so heavily unisex that like you kind of cross the languages over. So yeah, it's been great that the staff have like been able to sort of work on both brands, and they've fallen in love with both brands as well. So like the marketing team now work on both brands. We all do. It's probably the more operational stuff will start to then split and have its own. So like customer service will probably have one dedicated to each one and stuff like that. But there's 10 of us now, including me. I think it's getting bad because I'm starting to say like for the new people that start, it's going to start to take me a bit of time to figure out names. Yeah, but no, we've got a new one starting tomorrow, a new girl starting tomorrow, so that'll be 11, and then someone else starting in a couple of weeks, that'll be 12, and then we're recruiting again. So I think like come the end of the year, we'll be up to like 13, 14 across the brands. But Bound moved into a fulfillment centre, basically. So we overfilled our units. So I went into one unit, which was 2,000 square foot, filled that in 3 months, then got another one, so I had 5,000 square foot, filled that in another 3 months, and was like, I'm on fucking 5-year leases here, like I can't keep doing this. But they're in the same business park, and was like, shit, so we're trying to make the space management. The only thing we could do, because Bound was growing so fast, like was put it in a fulfillment centre and not have to worry about how much we order or how many orders we do, and it's going to be hellish, like getting a 200 box delivery and it's going to take all day to process in the rain or the sun or whatever. It's like, it was really a big, important decision that Bound moved into a fulfillment center, which is ultimately having like 3 or 4 staff, but just outsourced, if you like, because they've got there's like a dedicated like team members in the fulfillment center that just look after Bound, and like the orders get dispatched in like a matter of hours, and the deliveries are processed in like less than 24 hours. So everything is so smooth and seamless for Bound. That's like having staff that I don't have to deal with. They're just managed by someone else. You pay a fucking fortune for it, but it's really good for the brand, because it's like, yeah, it just takes, you've got to see, like when you're doing things in house, you've got a ceiling, and that ceiling is space, and it's not easy just to go. It's like moving house. You can't just go, I'll just move house in a week if it's if it's not working. Just like these things take time, and there's nothing worse than like basically we could hold and sell way more stock, but we can't because we can't fit it in the unit. So yeah, that was a massive thing for us.
Amazing. And that first hire, that first person, who was that? That's quite a big moment for a business owner.
Yeah, well, I'd say that I've kind of like had 2 first hires in a way. Like the first one was like a girl who just basically started coming in and sewing some neck labels for me. and she was just like a student, and that was in my first like 150 square foot warehouse and like a unit. I wouldn't even say warehouse. It was like a creative block of buildings in Manchester. So it was 150 square foot, nothing. We had one shelf of stock, probably about 200 t-shirts. So she was like sewing like the neck labels and stuff like that. And then she started doing more and more stuff. She went from like 4 hours to 10 hours to 16 hours. And then she was done that for like a year. And then she was going on placement because she did fashion design at uni. So I was like, fuck it, should I ask her to do placement? And she came and did placement with me. And she did a year's placement, and she was brilliant. Claudia, she worked with me for ages, but she didn't even go through like an interview process. It was just like, I put an Instagram story up. It was like, I need a bit of help doing this. And so she just came in and was like, sat next to me and just did it the first day. Do you know what I mean? And then ended up staying with me for like a year and a half. And she was just absolutely brilliant. She's had a little kid now, actually. She's only 22. So she finished her degree and then just had a kid. But she was brilliant. So, but then Jordan, who's now like works in ops and sort of like warehouse ops and logistics, and he's doing a bit of buying. Like everyone does a bit of everything, which is a good thing about having a team of 10. Like everyone crosses over the field. So Jordan is actually from Wem, which is my home, just 5 miles outside my hometown. And I once again put an Instagram story up, so I got this job, and he came up. He was like, "Oh, like I'm still living at home, but like I really want a new challenge. Like don't have any experience in fashion or like e-commerce or retail." He was working for his parents at the time, and was just like, "But I love the brand, like really, really like it, like bought loads of stuff." And I was like, "Well, come and have a chat." And then did rounds of interviews, but then spoke to him and still had the best feeling. And I was just like, "Do you fancy it?" And he was like, "Yeah." And then literally just packed up, moved his whole life to Manchester, started a complete fresh. And then he's like absolutely flying, like loving it now, just getting on so well. And it's like, talk about like, it's just, yeah, just mad how he just sort of like packed up and just started a whole fresh, loves Manchester. Like, I think, touch word, but like from the impression I get, I think it was like the best decision he ever made, just to like move out of a tiny village town.
When you're looking for that first, when you're looking at all of your hires, to be fair, is the passion for the brand like the key thing? Like, does that mean everything?
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, it does. And then like culture's the main thing. Like you always like independent culture is like the strap line of Unik. It's been talked about for the whole 10 years, like the independent community culture. So like culture now, it's like you don't, when there's 2 of you, you don't have a culture, you don't have a company culture. When there's 5 of you, you don't really have a company culture. Like you're shaping it in that time. And it's gone from 2 to 18. No, 2 to the 10 in 18 months. So that's like, we've basically been just shaping the culture in that moment, but we've kind of got it now. Like we've kind of got it. It's like, as many modern businesses are, like young guys, like I'm only 32, like we're all young guys, like it's quite laid back, but like don't take the piss kind of thing. Like get your work done and we'll enjoy it. You know what I mean? So recruiting, one of the first things now, because I was like, I'd never done interviews, and then I'm interviewing to employ people to work for me, and I'm like, the first couple I was like pretty shy at, and I just went in and was like, yeah, like everything I do, I'm like, yeah, I won't prep questions, I'll just wing it and have a thingy. But then actually it's so important to actually have a structure for when you're recruiting for roles, and like actually to ask them questions. And luckily we've never had too many bad people. I've had a couple of rogue people so far that have come and gone. They just weren't right, they just weren't right, didn't have the right ethic, weren't passionate about the business. Like, and so it's like, you're right, you have to recruit, they have to be passionate about the business, otherwise, especially when it's a small business, otherwise they're just not going to want to do their job properly. They're not going to want to work hard. You've got to work. You can't just be like a fly on the wall in a small business, like, and a corp company, because you'll just get found out. Like you've got to want to be there. You've got to believe in the project. So that's a key like thing now, that my first 10 minutes of an interview are basically trying to find out if they're the right culture fit.
You
for
can't
us.
have passengers, can you? Especially when the money, like you're seeing the money, aren't you? Like, and what it's being spent on, and you're like, damn, I could be using that for something else. It's like, that's my money that I've made, and I want to.
Yeah, it's literally I'm paying someone out of my pocket. Like I may as well just hand it over. So when you see someone there like dicking about or not pulling their weight, you're like, that's 10 pints of Guinness wasted.
Would you prefer to hire someone that had done 2 years at All Saints or 2 years of their own brand?
And that's not your 2 years, is it? I'm not going to like.
It's not. I think for me, right, I always find it interesting because I'm always thinking about like hiring for us, right? Like one day, like we want to build our team as well. And like, we're always thinking like, one, who's that going to be? Two, like what's their experience going to be? And like what they're going to be like and what sort of person are they? Like there's all these questions going through. And then I'm sort of thinking now, like, would I want someone that was really entrepreneurial, that had gone out and done their own thing, and maybe it had been a success or maybe it hadn't, but at least they'd had those skills? Or would I want someone that had, and this is ultimately like what my parents told me, was like, go to uni, get a degree, and then go and find a really big brand like you did with, with Virgin. Do you know what I mean? And then get a job. Like for you, as like, because you're there, you're hiring people as like loads of people right now. Like, what would you prefer? Like, would you prefer someone that went out and did their own thing, or would you prefer if they'd done a more traditional path?
It's a tough one. Like I get a lot of people apply who were already running a brand, like a smaller brand, which is difficult because I did that. Like there was a phase where 3-4 years in where Unik wasn't really like anywhere near what it is now. It wasn't making too much money, and I was like, my parents were like, "You like probably think about maybe getting a job." And I was like,
proper job.
Literally, it was, and I was like, "Fuck, probably right." It was actually when I was moving back to Manchester from Shrewsbury. So then obviously I had bills to pay. So I was like, well, it was right. I did have to pay the bills in some way. So I was like, have to get a job. So I was like, right. So I was applying for a job. That was actually after a year and a half, a year and a half that I did this after starting Unik. So I was like, right. So I was applying for jobs. I got really close with Lad Bible when there was only about 5 or 6 of them at the time. And I remember applying for a job at Lad Bible, going for an interview with the owner who runs it. And then he kind of was like, well, I want to offer you a job. Like, I've kind of got this job as like, not my right-hand man, but like, I don't know, someone who probably did a little bit of everything. I think you're too good to just troll the internet for like stories and like social like content, which is what it was then. It was just like basically reviewing whatever people were writing in and stuff like that. So he kind of offered me the job, but didn't offer me the job. And then I ended up going back in for another interview. And then the exact same thing happened. And I went back for another like chat. And then I was just like, it got to about a month or 2 in. I was like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, I'm getting dicked about a little bit here. Like, I've been told I had a job, and then I've been told that I'm too good for this. So they'll do something for me. And it just got to the point where I was like, I'll sack that off. Like, I'm not getting to it. And they almost got a job at Betfred, based in Manchester, in their marketing thingy. And then didn't get that. And then so I was like, screw it. Like, I'll work in Top Man in the men's store. I actually applied for that, but I don't know. I was like, I'll work in retail. Never done it before. I was like, I'll work in retail, but go for stores that I thought might benefit what I'm doing with Unik, and say, well, do you know what? Like, because my plan was that I was always going to do the full-time role and still do Unik on the side. Like, it never would have happened with Lad Bible, especially with what they'd done. So it's almost like a weird saving grace that, like, I'm so glad that they fucked me about and I didn't do that job. I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, because I probably would have enjoyed that loads, because great business to work for. Like, what they've done is obviously insane. So like, I probably would have just stayed there. I probably would have just gone, oh, fuck Unik, and just done that. But yeah, so I ended up getting a job at Top Man in the menswear, like in the main street of the shops. Obviously not there anymore, but loved that. Loved, like, it was like going to uni again. Like, I'm surrounded by 20-odd-year-olds, like going out partying all the time. But also seeing, like, learning about clothes at the same time and then making enough money. So I ended up doing that for like a year and a year and a half, and had a mint time doing that, and then got to the point where I was like, when I first signed on for the first unit for Unik after like 3 years, I was like, right, start taking this a bit seriously now. But then I didn't take it I never took it that seriously until probably like 5 or 6 years when it was going, because I was just like, loved living in Manchester. I was always partying. Like, there was a big caveat of like the music parts of it that led me to a few good paths, and was like obviously going on tour with Scream and stuff like that. Like, that was like a big part of what Unik allowed me to then do, and like the freedom of things. So I was like, it was never about like, I'm going to build this to be the biggest thing. Like, I was just loving doing it, but also having the freedom of my own life and like partying and socializing. It was like, I've always been so social. Like, I was just enjoying meeting so many new people through doing it. That like, I would say that, the first 6, 7 years of, the first 5 years until Bound started, I would say I didn't take it too seriously. So it's almost a half miracle that Unik is now what it is. But like, it probably should have died like years before, but I was still always doing the right thing. Like, it was good that I could still enjoy life and not just dedicate my whole life to the business. And it's still like progressively like, but it's been a real slow burner, which is, I'm so happy it's been a slow burner, because it meant that like my early 20s, mid 20s, which were the most enjoyable period of my life, weren't dictated by business. And I'm so happy about that.
Was there ever a point where you were close to packing it in? And like, if you had advice to like anyone that's like a young business owner at the minute, and they're at that kind of low point where they're thinking about packing it in, what would your advice be?
You know what? Like, I'm not a quitter. Like, I hate quitting. Sometimes I find it hard to just get up and do something. But then like, when I'm doing something, like, I don't like quitting. Like, I work ridiculously hard, like too hard at some points. I should just learn when to just say that's enough. So like, there wasn't a point where I was like, apart from that, what I've talked about, I was like, okay, I should probably get a job. But it was never, I'm going to get a job to stop doing that. Like, as soon as I get a job, I'll stop doing that. It was always a job. It was always like, no, I'm going to support me still doing that. There's never been a point where I thought about packing it in, which is quite lucky. Like, because I've never ever got to the point where I feel insecure about it or second thought my own ability or the project or what it was, which is kind of a good thing and probably a reason why it's got to where it has, because you've got to kind of like maintain belief like throughout the whole period, and perseverance. Like, that's what one thing people ask me, like, one thing about like sticking, like any word of advice on doing it, it's like perseverance is the most difficult thing. It comes to some people naturally, comes to some people that like, some people second guess everything. So it's like, you just gotta really believe in it and give it enough time. Like, people think that people do it for a year and go, well, I've done it for a year. Like, that isn't enough time. It's like I said, 3 years for me before I was doing it full time. Like, that's a long time. And now for me, 3 years is like, feels like 10. But like, at the time, I was kind of doing so many other, and like, it wasn't the be all and end all for me. I was like, as long as I'm making enough money to like have a good life, like live it, like still go out and get pissed off on the weekend, I was happy.
Was there a moment where you were like, this is a thing, like this is like an actual business?
Yeah, there's loads of moments like that. Actually, there's loads of moments. It's not just one moment that I was like, oh, that was one turning point. There's been loads of little turning points. Like when we bought Bath back, which was a brand that I loved before. When starting Unik, so like Unik and Bath, like he was an independent guy from brand designer called Dan doing it in Loughborough, and I loved that sort of brand. And then he stopped it for 2 years, and then I approached him and was like, what about reviving it under Unik? Because he was working in London as a like 9-to-5 designer. Well, he was rammed, so I was like, I'll take all the work. Like you've got the designs, just do it. And we brought that back. I think we did like a run of like 30 t-shirts of 3 different designs. So we did 90 t-shirts, sold them all out in an hour, less than an hour. And I was like, I was still running it in my flat at that point. So like, it was a little Kallax against my wall. And I was like, and I went to play football And then after 60 minutes of playing football, came back, I was like, looked at all the notifications on my phone. I was like, holy shit. Like, wow. Like, that was the most I've done. So that was a turning point. And then Scream, first one of Scream, 30 t-shirts gone in 60 seconds. I was like, that was another turning point. And then like the Bound, obviously the first Bound release, but then like every Bound release feels like it's a new. There are so many, like, it feels like a new cog just turning, and it's like, yeah, this is now the next level. Like, it's like leveling up on a game of Mario or whatever. You just there's 1,000 levels, but you just keep doing one each time, and it changes very slightly. So yeah, I mean, if there was there's so many little turning points like that I remember that I can't be like, oh yeah, this is a real business now. I've never really taken that. Maybe more than only the last year, I would say, like probably reaching 8 staff. And actually, for me, mentally becoming a boss is when I've gone, oh yeah, this is a proper business, because now I'm a boss and like people's livelihoods and like depend on me. So like that makes me feel like, oh, this is a bit more of a big deal, you know.
Love it. I've got to ask, being a bit of a Scream fan, what's your relationship with Scream then?
I love him. We've known each other for like 6 years, longer than that, man. He had the first ever set of like pieces in the first year. So yeah, I've known him for like 9 years or whatever now. It's crazy. Wow. And he was like the first DJ that just didn't want to just take free stuff and be like, give nothing back. He was the first one who was like, yeah, don't just send it to my manager, or like, don't send it to me, my address, like just ship it here. He was like, yeah, come, here's my number, come give it me at the show. And I was like, wow. Fucking hell, that's cool as hell. I met him and he was like, obviously got me guest list for Warehouse Project, which was for me at the time, I was like, it's unbelievable, get to go for free. Like, had a beer backstage with him, was like, and then just slowly but surely, we just got on really, really well. We're like quite, like, I think quite chatty characters. So like, you can have a conversation about fucking anything, and he's one hell of a guy. Like, he's got ridiculous amount of energy. He makes me feel tired. Like, but he's just mint. Like he just looks out for people like me, amazing. DJ brands, like, which just unintentionally, without trying to get anything back. Like, don't get me wrong, he's had his fair share of free clothes, but he's not without what he's given me back. Like guest list to any show, like festival, whatever. But yeah, he's just a mental but lovely guy. Yeah, proper sound.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I want to talk about, because like there's so many celebrities that have like, I presume there's like loads of celebrities that have just placed orders like naturally, right? Because I see that happen all the time.
Yeah, there'll be fucking loads that I don't know about as well, which is the mental thing. So like the Kevin De Bruyne thing, I think was like, we would like trying to search his name, and it was like, obviously Kevin De Bruyne has not bought some stuff under his name. Yeah. Like, where's the link? Where's the link? Where's the root of this?
Yeah.
And I think it was like his missus, his best mate or something, had bought it. And like, we would have never have known, but he wore that full fit going to the World Cup, and they had a photographer there. And I remember waking up and someone had sent me on Twitter, and like DM'd me, a big City fan that I used to work with ages ago in Tottenham. And he DM'd me, he was like, this is yours. And it wasn't a fully brand, it was like the more minimal branded stuff. So it's like no frontal logos. The logo's on the sleeve. It's like a really high quality piece where we purposely like minimize the branding. So it's on the sleeve. So it's on quite a rogue position, but could see it and knew when you see your own product, you know straight away. And I was just like, oh my fucking God, it's the full fit. And that blew me away, because it's like, I'm a Liverpool fan, so I hate him. But also I was like, that is absolutely mint. I was like, that's as good as it gets. So that just for me felt mint. And then we've had like, in the same week that, well, James Maddison wore that polo, he bought the stuff, so that was under his name. And Victor Lindelof bought something the day before. So I was like, what's going on here? There's like, and they bought it under their name, so we could obviously spot them.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a weird thing. Like, and then basically, I think there was a link of like a VIP shopper really like Bound, and he was like maybe sending the link around a bit, which was, I thought, that probably makes sense a little bit. But then, like, yeah, loads of people we've seen loads of people come in, sort of like that. And that's how the hell Matthew Helder's thing came about, because I was packing the orders at the time. It was only me running Bound. I was still packing every order. went on Shopify and like Matthew Helders, I was like, fucking can't be, can it? What? Cannot be. Favorite band ever. I've listened to them for 20 years. You know what I mean? Like growing up with them was like literally top of Spotify every year for however many years. I was like, couldn't got any better for me. That seen that and was like, did all the cross checks, followed on Instagram. That was it. That was the start of something magic, which is just all because he bought some stuff and I saw it. So it's like.
And what happened? Yeah. Did you just reach out to him?
I did the mentalist story with the Helders thing of how organic and crazy it is. Because like these day and age, you've got like loads of agencies that do brand partnerships. So they'll like try and piece together a brand and an individual and just go, yeah, do you work together? There you go. You two fucking meet like at a speed dating thing. That's just engineered bullshit, like which I kind of hate because you can spot it from a mile away. Yeah. But yeah, I messaged him in 2019 because I shoot film as well, so 35mm film as well, so film camera. He I followed him for ages. He was basically just posting his photography work, which I absolutely loved. But it wasn't like fashion photography; it was more like things he sees. So I just messaged him, was like, look, if you ever wanted to shoot any fashion photography, like I'm a massive fan, or like if you ever wanted to do anything, like or wanted any pieces, like let me know. I sent that in 2019, like 6 months after I started Bound. He obviously never saw it or it off. He probably wouldn't tell me that now, but like, yeah, he obviously never saw the messages because he'll have like thousands of DMs. And then he bought the stuff, got the package, put something on Instagram. And obviously when he's put that on Instagram and tagged me, he's accepted my message request from 2 years earlier, and replied to it without realising. And he was like, did you just message me really fast? And I was like, mate, I messaged you in 2019. And he was like, that was like an instant icebreaker of like, we were having a bit of a laugh. And I was like, mate, like, look, still feel the same now. Like, would love to. And he was like, yeah, I'm down for it. Love the stuff. Like, love everything I got. And then I was like, fuck, I'm not prepared for this conversation. And sort of went away and like kept sending him some bits, and like we were chatting just naturally anyway, just about general bits. And then I was like, right, it's about 6 months in. I was like, this is my proposal. Like, do you want to do this? This is how I envision it. Like, I really want to capture a bit of you. And I was like, for me, it was like, when we came down to talk about the commercials, like, yeah, it's not about the money for me. He was like, yeah, it's not about the money. So it's like, it's just split. And it was like the most natural, organic, like perfect way of doing it from the start, like constantly through. We just basically was like, he loved the clothes, I love what he was doing, came together and just made sense that we did what we did. So yeah, it was just, I'll never, like, for me, I'll never top that. And I think I've basically sort of like locked the door and shut the door on any Bound and individual, especially Bound and like probably musical collaborations for the moment.
Yeah.
I just couldn't peak that. I went in at the very top for me and like what I'll do. And like, luckily, like we've got a really good relationship and watched them everywhere in the world now. Like we watched them on the night that we got engaged in Tokyo. Like they were playing in Japan when we were over there, like fortunately. So yeah, it's been like a major part of like my life from when I was like 12, 13 to now being like a monumental part of my life and like career, which is just, you couldn't write it. And it's still to this, like, I'll probably look back at it in 10 years time. I went with my brother to the gig on Saturday and he was just like, this is fucking mental. Like, I can't believe it. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And I'll probably get to that point like when you're in the moment, you have to believe it because you're doing it, you know, but like in 10 years time, I'll probably look back and go, shit, did I really do that? Like when there's documentaries about the Arctic Monkeys and they'll probably be on album 10 and be the biggest band that there's probably ever been in this country, I'll be like, fuck, I did that. So yeah, it's madness really.
I was going to ask you, like, was there anyone else that you'd like to collab with? And you just said, like, this is the pinnacle. It's just so funny, isn't it?
It won't rule out collaborations completely because, like, there's brands that I love that would open loads of things to me. So, like, I'd love to do a Bound Clarks collaboration, a Bound New Balance. There's loads of, like, heritage brands that I've worn like that. Even, like, crossing brands. So like I talked about Lacoste heavily, what I wore when I was a kid, like a Bound Lacoste collab for me would be like, oh, that would be just like, that would be of a similar remit of like, but in a different sort of field. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that possible? Like getting a huge brand like that? Because I just feel like some of those brands, they're like unwieldy. Do you know what I mean? Like there's like, you're going to be dealing with like 10,000 people in this business. Like as like a small business, how are you even like going about? Like obviously this hasn't happened, but if it was to happen, how would it happen?
Yeah. There's a couple of collabs on the burner for Unik at the moment, which I wish I could talk about. I don't want to mention it, mainly because in case it probably won't happen. When we chat again in the future, if it's still not happened, I might mention it. But we're chatting to some big wigs that make sense for Unik for the direction, but that is like we've been talking for like a year because there's just so many areas and like loops and fucking cycles. Whereas with me and Matt was like, should we do this? Yeah. We didn't even have to sign content. We didn't have to do anything. We just like, we went, should we do this? Yeah, sound. Do you like this? Yeah, sound. How should we change this? Should we do this for shoot? Yeah, sound. But whereas then you've got to like get it signed off by hundreds of people, which is, I can't be asked for that. You know, I'm like, I love working with independents for sure. And that's why like it makes so much sense because it's such an easier thing to do. Like everything's level playing field. Like you can just have proper conversations without any bollocks. But like, yeah, how it would look, we're doing the cost. God, it would be amazing. It'd be worth it though. You have to just look at it like it'd just be worth it. Like I don't know how it works, like who manufacturers you'd use or like how you'd work it with that. Like depends. I guess it depends on like the type of clothes that you're making. Like Clark's, I would envision like I've already got like the designs in my head of how I would want a Bound Clark's to look. And obviously they will go away and make it like be some such cool like things to do with that. But yeah, hopefully like I think Bound probably gets to that stage like we chat to Clark's a bit and like they send us shoes for shoots and stuff like that. So hopefully we're on the radars enough that they would be like that. Yeah, we're kind of fit the bill. So fingers crossed. So
we're putting that into ether now. Bound Clark's collab.
Bound
it's going to happen.
Bound Lacoste.
Yeah.
I need to start getting down to fucking Soho House or something.
That's it. That is it. That is the way that all of the deals are done. But then that means you have to come to London, and you hate coming to London.
I put him one in Manchester apparently, but I don't know. It's like I'm not like that at all, which is like the funny thing. Like the funny thing about it, like that's why it's so mad that the kind of like the collaborations have come about because I'm not like I'll ask the question. But like, I'll ask the question if I know it's right. I wouldn't just be like, I'm not one to be like, sort of like buzzing around networking, like sucking up to like big brand people just to like try and get a way in. Like, if it stumbles across the doorstep, like I'll sweep it in. You know what I mean? That's how it kind of works for me. It's that. So like, that's why it's kind of been lucky. But yeah, I'm not like one of those really out there sort of like CEOs, if you like, that like a lot of brands you kind of get that now, which works for them because like they're building sort of like something. That's how like they connect with other people and sort of celebs and influencers and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm not really like that much. Really, it's just like if I end up chatting to someone and then get on with them well, it's more organic relationship. It's just like when you meet any normal or like new mate, really.
Yeah.
So
yeah, don't let it become too big then, mate. I feel like you're not born to work in a big corporation. So I think maybe 50 staff and you'll be like, I've lost the fun in this a little bit, maybe.
I probably swear too much. HR door will be bruised.
Yeah, it's what a few like owners find when the business starts to become like unwieldy and not like small startup anymore. Some of them lose the love for it. The co-founder of Gymshark, Lewis, lost the love for it when it became like a big corporation. So it does happen, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can for sure, mate, and I can feel myself now already getting waves of that. Like I couldn't sit here and say in honesty, like now it does look all like bells and whistles and songs and dancing, like, but 80% of the time I spend doing shit that I don't enjoy doing. I like stress about shit. I like worry about stuff. Like it's not you're never always doing shit that you enjoy doing anyway, because you've got to do accounts, you've got to do all that bollocks, and like it's, you never always enjoy it. But now it's like I can have real tough days and weeks, like where I'm like, yeah, this isn't enjoyable, because I'm not born, or not. I'd like to think I'm adjusting more to managing a bigger thing. And I was actually speaking to one of the couriers today, because we basically had like 10 grand's worth of orders go missing. And we're kind of joking about that. What would we have done if they got found in the end? They got given to the wrong courier. But we were like, if we didn't find them, like, where would we be now? And he was like, well, I wouldn't be sat here for starters. But I was just saying, like, you get to the point where you kind of like have to write off 2-3K sometimes without even, you can't think about it. So like I was going camping, and at 4:30 on that Friday, it was like, got told about the 10K missing orders. And I was about to go to a 30th party camping, and I was like, I actually managed to switch off from it and just go, do you know what? Like, I'll worry about it on Monday, which is 2 years ago, I'd have been like, just wouldn't have enjoyed it. I'd have been sweating. I'd have been on my phone all the time, like texting, like, come on, we've got to be able to fix it. Like, trying to do everything but actually it got to the point where I was like, there was no leads. So I was just like, well, we just have to wait. Do you know what I mean? And I was actually quite proud of myself at that time, just for taking a bit of a step back and going like, don't worry about it too much. Like, it will figure itself out, which it did. So like, you go through so many bumps that like you start to adjust. And I just hope that I'm in that phase now where I'm like, okay, the more staff, like in a year's time, like I've learned, I'm in that learning curve, because it is all the learning curve. And I say I'm so completely transparent with the staff. Like when I'm on the Monday morning meeting, like I'm learning how to do this. So like, you have to bear with me if I don't do it right at certain points. Like you can tell me, like I've never managed a team before. Now I'm managing like everyone. It's like I'm sole responsibility. Do you know what I mean? So like, I think just as long as you can, and I tell this to them all the time, like as long as you communicate, like completely openly and transparently, which is what we try to do as a business to our customers externally as well. I think that's just like, you learn from that, which I think is the main thing. So hopefully like in a year's time, I'll be like, I am used to it and don't have to step away from it. I would hate that, but like it is in the back of my mind where I'm thinking like, so similarly to what Ben did from Gymshark, like take a step back and go, I can probably hire someone to do this part of the business in a senior role better. So like managing the staff, and because like I'm quite matey with all the staff, but then that becomes difficult because when you want to give them a fucking bollocking, which sometimes everyone has to have at some point, like it's hard. Like I still find that really awkward. Like don't like doing it, but I'm kind of better at it now. But like the first couple was so hard to do, and now I'm like, yeah, I can tell someone you being an idiot a bit more freely. But yeah, I think many business owners say all these cliches, but it's because they kind of make sense. But like it is just I feel like now it's the start of a new journey. I kind of split the journey up into like 4 different segments, but yeah, it's been a journey, but I think it's like kind of only just starting a little bit. So
nice.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Well, don't hit all of your pinnacles, mate. You're too early in your career, because that would be my advice. So don't do the Lacoste deal next week, all right?
Yeah. He's already done it. Yeah. The contract's are signed. You just can't say anything.
It's just got to be
let's get the and then we've got to get Rafael Nadal in it, and then it'll be sweet.
What are you best and worst at in your businesses in terms of roles?
Oh, I'd say best at like marketing and just coming up with mad little ideas pretty quickly and just saying, yeah, let's do them. And then worst at actually procrastinating the jobs that really, really need doing that are dead boring.
Right, next one. What has been, because you've gone all over the world with your shoots, what's been your favourite shoot location ever?
Oh, that's a tough question because they've all been absolutely class. I mean, LA with Helders was wicked. We had such a good time. Just generally just didn't feel like work or a shoot. We just had a bit of a holiday and just, had an absolute class time. So that's definitely going to be it for like a shoot for sure. But I love Malta, and we managed to get that Rolls Royce for like 300 euros or something all day, and it was crazy. It was like the Rolls Royce in that shoot is like, oh my days. So we were just getting driven around by this guy, and people were like bibbing at us because they thought we were celebrities, and like we were just waving in the car. It was just this, like, that was unbelievable. That was unbelievable. So Malta I loved, yeah. But they've all been like, it's hard to pick. They've all been class. Love Palermo, love Copenhagen. Yeah, just all mint because it's like story.
How many of those have you been the model for?
0.
I think that's a lie, mate, because I've definitely seen some pictures of you in those locations.
Yeah, you might see, no, it's funny, there's like, I've got this really bad habit of being in the background of shots and like waving at the background, like when I go in and do like some fluffing of the shirts or whatever. You know, like when the brand owner's trying to look important on a shoot, so they're going like fluff the colour a little bit. Now I'll go and do that. But no, I've not. There might be a few shots where I'm like strictly, if I'm ever wearing something and they take a photo of me, I'm like, cut my fucking head off. I was anti-face for like, I didn't put my face in front of the brand for like 6-7 years, you know, like anything, podcasts, anything.
So we've spoken to loads of brand owners recently where they are the face of the brand. They kind of have to in this modern generation because they have to, like, they don't have the marketing budget. They kind of have to like do the organic content, create shows, create content off their own back. Now, do you have to be the face of a brand? And like, do you feel like if you were starting again, like you'd have to be?
I think you can. I don't think you have to be the face of a brand. No, I think like ultimately the quality of the product does the talking and the marketing and the story and the vision, and you can do that without having to put your face in front of it. Which is what I like to think we do and hope to think we do. I've never been the face of the brand, and I never will be. We're becoming more personal and becoming more personable as I guess I've got more of a confidence when I've got a few people behind me. But like, I like to tell the story, like the vision of where we shoot things for Bound and stuff like that. And like where my design inspiration comes to it, but without talking to it in front of a camera, actually doing it in the vision. But like the modern brands, basically, like it's like someone who can build a brand and has that experience, has that like expertise, and then an influencer put in front of them, that is like how most modern e-commerce and retail businesses exist now. That is like the perfect formula, and it fucking works. Like, don't get me wrong, like there's some amazing brands that do that, and I know some amazing brands that have had huge success in doing that. And then there is like, a lot of the modern streetwear brands where it's like the CEO is at the forefront of the business, and it brings that level of like arrogance and like personality, and people buy into people. So I can see why it works. It's just not the way that I do things.
What has been the biggest waste of money in your business career?
Oh God, that's a great question. But when I first started Bound, I don't know if you ever remember, there was a showcase like called Jacket Required, where like all the buyers would go and you'd showcase your collection. It was basically like a trade show type thing. Did that, and it cost me like $2,500, and I got fuck all from that. I was like, I got free drink. I was like, it come to the end of it, and it was a free bar for like the traders, and I was like, I ain't getting anything back from this, so I'm just going to rinse all the fucking. But yeah, like I said before, like you kind of, as you get bigger, you just have to get to the stage where you've got to write off a couple of grand without even having to think about it, because couriers are shit and manufacturers can be shit. So yeah, loads of things.
Right, last one. This has been so good. I've really enjoyed this. So, what is the favourite piece that you've ever created?
Could say the disco only one because that's what pays the wages. But oh man, it's got to be a Bound piece, and I'm now like, that's a real on the spot because there's so many. I can't even tell you. I think we must have done like over 500 different styles of garments now, easy. So it's just like, my missus is looking at me now, so she's thinking, pick an item that she designed. What is it?
It's probably one of the best knit polos.
Yeah, the first knit. So the Reese knit polo, when that first came, which is like cream collared with like the greeny sort of like chevron pattern through it. The bound, that was the first knitwear bound piece. And one of my missus's like mum's family friends is a pattern designer. She did the pattern for me after I found it in like, saw a similar pattern in like an old film and was like, loved it. And then she designed it. And then that was the first knitwear piece. So like knitwear and woven is like a completely different ball game. You're like creating a whole new, like knitwear is just, it's just a crazy different level of production. When that first came, I was just like, oh my God, I've definitely worn that piece the most. So yeah, the Arise knit polo by Bound.
Love that.
Amazing. We'll flash a picture up.
Yeah. There'll be pictures all the way through.
Find one of me somewhere. Don't find one of me.
Yeah, we'll
mate, you're across all of this content. You've just got to do that. I've seen you. I've got your Instagram. You're going across every piece of content, and I'm not taking that you're not a model because I've seen you in the pieces. You're just going to have to accept that you are.
Yeah, it's been class. I really enjoyed it, guys. It's nice because I don't do this. Like, this is probably the first one I've done of this for like, I don't know, 3 years or something. So I never get to like open my brain up and talk about things. Like, that's why I wanted to do it without reading off a sheet, because I was like, I never do it. So apart from chatting to mates in the pub, and they're sick about hearing about it. So I might talk to someone who's actually interested in what I've got to say in a bit of the stories. Yeah. It reminds me of like things that I don't think about day to day, or like things that I don't talk about, like all those little stories about Lad Bible and stuff like that are true, that just don't come across my brain unless someone asks me. So yeah, it's been real nice.
No, we're so grateful, mate. Honestly, like,
no, it's nice. Yeah, I like what you guys are doing. So yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Oh no, it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, mate. Well, like we were just saying, like we'll have to do part 2 one day, because I've got really a million. Yeah, and I've got a million other questions that
mate. One day we'll to look at the time a little bit. Top Rats. Fuck, I've not even talked about anything really yet. We were just boxing off, but no, 100% we'll do a part 2. I think even in a year's time, like I said, going from 2 to 10 in 18 months, like even in a year's time, I think we'll be in a crazy different thing. And then who knows, maybe that Lacoste collab will be in the woodworks or something. There'll be something for sure. Like, there's so much mad stuff happening, mate. Like, week in, week out. We're actually doing like a really cool series. I didn't mention it, to be fair, because it's not been mentioned too much at the moment. We're doing a really cool series called Bound by Passion. And it's basically like where we're doing like a mini documentary series. It'll be out this summer, so it'll be out relatively soon. It's a mini documentary series on all the people that have, like, all creatives, but across different industries, that have been affiliated with Bound. So like customers. So like, we done a band called the Lavens yesterday. They're like a really good indie band from Wigan. They love the stuff and bought loads of stuff. We're doing Ollie Ryder, who's Sean Ryder's son from Happy Mondays. He's like does his own club nights in Manchester. We're doing What Will He Cook on Saturday, who's the Mob Kitchen DJ. Mob Kitchen DJ, Mob Kitchen chef. And yeah, so he was a Bound customer. So we've had all those like people we were talking about that been Bound customers. We were like, I was like, we've got a pretty cool, good like pool of talent and creatives here, and they're all people who have, similar to like what I've done, turned like a passion into like forged it into a career. So there's a bit of a caveat to it. So it's going to be like a really good little documentary series. So keep your eyes on that. That'll be out in the next. Yeah, we're going to start drip feeding them like every month. So God knows where we'll be in a year's time and who we might have done that with.
Well, again, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for this. We've really enjoyed it. See you later, mate.
Thanks,
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.